What's good, my beautiful people? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is one that I'm super excited for, as this is going to mark a change in the way that I am teaching color grading on this platform, and a change that I also believe is truly needed. We're going to start approaching color grading with a concept that I like to call scene-based color grading. I'm a firm believer that all cinematographers should be colorists to some extent, and that all colorists should go outside, touch a little grass, and be cinematographers to some extent. I also firmly believe that color grading starts in pre-production and is not something that should be left as an afterthought with respect to post-production, as every decision that we make on set will largely affect what we are able to do in post-production. And furthermore, if we are not shooting for the scene or the look that we have in mind, it's going to be harder to accomplish in post, and it also may feel unnatural. And with time, the goal is to help everybody really understand how we can articulate these things when we're in the pre-production process, and how we can overall become better artists with our knowledge of color theory to build the films of our dreams. So with that, today we're going to be breaking down a very simple interior day scene. We're going to analyze the color theory, we're going to build a look, and we're going to have some fun. So let's head into DaVinci Resolve and get started. So first things first, I'm just going to go ahead and mention this now, as we won't be talking about it later in the tutorial. These are the color management settings that I have set up. We've talked about color management a lot on the channel, so I'm going to just start showing you these settings and moving past the step for the sake of time. If you have any questions about color management, go ahead and check out the links in my description down below, under the section of color management, where you can learn more after this tutorial. So our scene, we have a scene that I shot from a short film. The story that's going to motivate the look is really a teen who is going through emotional distress due to family challenges. So we don't want a look that's overly bright or commercially or overly happy. We want something that has a little bit of grit and drama to it. Now, normally what we would do is a teal and orange scenario here, or just something that's known as a complementary color scheme. That's the easiest way to create drama and color separation. Oftentimes people think it's overdone too, but we don't have the opportunity to do that because of our set design. So let's go ahead and get into that and talk about the limitations that we have here. So set design and technicality wise, we have an interior day scene here. We have a window that's motivating the light for this scene. We have an LED panel that's actually outside of this window, blasting it at 100% with light that's calibrated to the window light coming in, so everything continues to look natural. And that serves as our key light on this side. My intention was more for an 8:1 ratio. I think we're still a little bit light on this side of the face, so we're going to go ahead and work with that when we get into our node tree. But overall, that is the scene that we have. Very simple bedroom scene. Here's the thing though. We were limited with respect to our set design because we got the location for free, which means we can't really change a lot, right? So the white bed sheets and the white walls have to stay the same, because this is a location that is a friend's Airbnb that they kindly let us use. So we have to keep it in the exact same order. The only variables which we can control in a situation like this to create some contrast between the skin of the talent and really the scene itself is going to be what they're wearing. Now, I was rushing when I was talking with my talent, which was also free, and I forgot to say, hey, wear a cool colored shirt. It's going to work out better. They wore a red shirt, so we now have to work with that in post. But for the most part, at least the jacket and the phone are practicals that we can also control. Phone is blue, and the jacket has some blue in there, or is more on the neutral side, so we can work with that. And with that talk of neutrals and whites, this is where color theory and limitations start to come in. If you were to go onto Shot Deck and type in interior day scene white interior, you're going to get very few results, because working with white and trying to create a creative look is oftentimes limiting. Generally, you will see us gravitate towards darker colors on set because we can actually push colors into those darker colors and it looks more natural. And so when we're thinking about white and black and all the tints and shades of gray in between, we really don't tend to think about those as important colors to consider, but they very much so are, especially if you're looking for a location and you want to create a look that's creative. You're going to want to go towards those darker darker colors. Because naturally, let's say we have a charcoal wall and I want that wall to actually be more of an earthy green. Well, I can go ahead and push some green into the darker region of the image, and it's going to mix with that dark charcoal color and give us a very luxurious Benjamin Moore forest green looking wall that looks intentional and looks like it was natural. And the sheets would have worked in that exact same way as well. However, white is different. White reflects the characteristics of the light around it. And naturally, we only have two colors of light, which now limits us in our scene creation. So with respect to warmer light, we have sunrise, sunset, golden hour, light peering through the room, very bright and cheery type of environment, right? Looks natural because now you're thinking, oh, it's a nice, warm, sunny sunset type of day. Or we have blue light, which is going to give us more of an overcast day vibe, or it's going to give us more of a sunset, or after sunset, I should say, blue hour type of vibe, rainy day or right before the sun rises. That's how the white is interacting with the environment. It's with the light around it. And so if we deviate from that, right, it's no longer going to look natural. So if I go ahead and now make it more magenta, okay, that don't look so natural anymore, right? Something's obviously wrong. It now looks like I've made a mistake. And similarly, if I put in green, it now looks like I made a mistake. Although it looks a little bit better, it looks like I made a mistake. Even if we tried to cool it down, it still doesn't feel quite right now because we've mixed in a color there that does not really belong or work, at least to an extreme. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create an analogous color scheme, and I'm going to work with the color of my skin tones all the way down. So from right around here, this orangey area, the yellow orange area, all the way down to just a little bit of that green, blue, teal, and it's going to be just a tint of it in the shadows, not too aggressively, may even stay on the green side. And I guess I'm going to have to include red in here because of his shirt. So I guess we're just taking up half of the quadrant of the color wheel, but we're going to expand those colors and make this look work to create some grit. So let's go ahead and start with our camera raw adjustments. First thing I'm going to do is I want to balance this image out so I feel like we get more of a neutral white. It looks like we're leaning more towards the warm side right now. And looking at my vector scope, I would say that's the same thing. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this down probably to like 5600 Kelvin. We'll do 5500 Kelvin. That's brought us more into a neutral standpoint, and we're just going to alleviate some of that green that we have going on in there, probably to around right here. Now you can see we have a nice neutral white and a nice starting standpoint. Now, because this is a ProRes RAW Cinema DNG, and we are using ProRes RAW Cinema DNGs, what I like to do with these DNG files is really back off of the midtone detail quite a bit because I feel like it's really strong after the conversion. So just a note with that. And before I move on into my node tree, I'm just going to go ahead and bring down that saturation so I can control it a little bit better in post. And this just gives us a nice, clean, less joyful palette to start working with so that we can really enhance the dramatic tension that's going to happen in the story. So let's go ahead and open up our node tree now. And we're going to go ahead and start with 3 serial nodes. That's Alt S 3 times. The first node is always going to be, for the most part, with the exception to the rule one time, noise reduction. If I have established contrast and an established noise ratio, I go ahead and do the noise reduction first. We're going to leave that node alone, and we're going to go into our second node, and that's going to be sharpening. I always do this node first because it's a spatial adjustment, and I don't want to leave it to the end for the most part, and I also don't want to put it in a parallel series because it's going to cause some issues down the road. The third node that we have is called skin tones. We are just going to leave this node here as a placeholder if we need to adjust our skin tones later. And the reason why I keep this in the beginning of the node tree before any of my contrast or color adjustments is because if I decide to pull out a key after I've built out my look, and then I'm talking with a director or I walk away and I don't like something about my contrast or my color and I make an adjustment, well, now that's no longer going to affect my key if I do that, versus if my key is over at the end of the node tree after all of the contrast, well, then that adjustment's going to mess up the values that are being interpreted for the qualifier that I've pulled. So that's why I leave my skin tones in the beginning of the node tree. From there, we're going to go Alt S for another serial node and Alt P twice for a total of 3 parallel nodes. Now in node 4, we're just going to title this one lift. We're going to have node 5 as gamma, and we're going to have node 6 as gain. What this allows us to do is separate any of our high end, middle end, and low end adjustments with respect to exposure. I will also pair lift with shadows with respect to my log wheels, gamma with midtones, and gain with highlights, all with respect to log wheels if I am making adjustments. So the first thing that I want to do is create that contrast, right? So I'm going to start with the low end of the image, which is going to be lift, and we're going to go into our color primaries. And remember that lift works by starting from the bottom and working towards the top. And so we're going to pull the image down from the bottom and make it darker. This is going to primarily affect our low end, but it will spread to our high end as well. If you need a visual representation, look at the shadow area and watch how the color that I'm adding starts in the shadows, then moves its way to the high end of the image. So we're just going to move on to gamma right now, and we're going to go ahead and pull that down just a bit too. Now gamma works from the middle and stretches out both ways. So it's going to start in more of the midtones, correct? And it's going to move its way out equally to the shadow and highlight region of the image. And then we can go into our gain adjustment, because remember the whole point is that we're stretching the image and making contrast. We could be generous with our gain adjustment, bringing our key value back up to where it belongs. So somewhere around right about here. So before and after, our whole goal was to add in contrast. So remember, we can come back and revisit these. I'm going to add in a serial node, so Alt S again, and 3 parallel nodes. This is going to function as lift, gamma, and gain, but for our colors. So I'm going to go ahead and label those accordingly. So now remember, we talked about how our whites have to stay neutral, but we want to pull out some grit to this image. We want to try to add in some cooler colors into the shirt. So starting with the lower end of our image and working out, we're gonna go ahead and add in a blue color to the image. And I'm just going to do something very simple right there. What this adjustment has done, as you can see, because we're starting with the lower end and working up, is it's kept our whites for the most part looking natural, which is our whole goal. Now we can go ahead and work in a little bit further, starting from the middle and seeing how close we can also get by adding in another blue color without affecting the image too much in the highlight region. And so now we're starting to get really, really cool on the white. We can see that only the brightest portions of the image are actually staying truly white. So what we can do from here now is with color and gain, we can use our knowledge of color theory to mix in from the top down a warm color to neutralize the sheets a little bit, maybe add in a little bit of color to his face as well, but still maintain that cooler color in the bottom portion of the image. So it may look like we've canceled out a lot of what we've done, but we've actually accomplished our mission. First of all, if you're looking at the vector scope, you can see here that we're starting to push into that blue area. And if we're looking on the waveform, the darker part of our image is now cooler, which is what we were going for. But we also wanted to have an analogous color scheme. So we needed to make sure that we're still on the left quadrant of the color wheel, which is where we're at. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and use our other color tools, such as the log wheels, with a little bit more control to refine this image. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in 4 serial nodes right here. And the first thing that I'm going to do here is actually adjust my black levels with the log wheels. So I'm going to go back into my lift section here, and I'm actually going to raise up my black point generously right about there. And I'm going to adjust the low range just a little bit so that we're not affecting so much of the shadow side. And coming back into node 12, now I'm going to go ahead and bring that down just a bit. And you can see here how we've recovered a lot of the hair at this point, and we've added in our contrast. So now you can see we have more detail of the hair coming out. I may just bump this up a little bit more while also maintaining a nice black level. So you can see we've added in that contrast. Good. Now let's go ahead and correct the white portions of our image. So the highlights specifically with a little bit more control. What I like to do is I'm going to throw in a color. Well, nothing happened. Well, that's because we haven't specified our high range. So we can go ahead and start moving this down until we affect the portions that we want. So I'm liking right around here. I think this is the portion of the image that I want to control. I can go ahead and reset that. And now using my knowledge of color theory, I'm going to back off of what we had going on there. And I'm going to neutralize out what I can. So right around here is where I'm feeling good. Now, I'm not going to quite go into my shadow adjustment just yet, because I want to bring out a little bit more of the intensity in the colors and the shadows first, and then feed a node into that that's going to allow me to correct the bottom portion of that image. So what we're going to do is we're going to change our color space on node 14 to HSL or HSV. I'm going to select HSL for this point, and we're going to turn off the hue in HSL, so channel 1. We're going to keep saturation because that's what we want to affect, and we're going to turn off channel 3, which is going to be luminance. And from there, I'm going to turn up the saturation in the image to see what we're actually working with. After adjusting the saturation, I can see where I'm at now, so I can go ahead and add another serial node. I want to make one more adjustment to bring us a little bit closer to what we were going for with that analogous color scheme by adding in an offset in the direction of the color that we need to add in. And now you can see by adding in just a little bit of that green, we've really pushed more towards on that bottom portion, right? That blue we were looking for. We have that red going on in the shirt. What we need to do now is just clean up our shadows. So go ahead and add one more node. And with our log qualification, we can throw in a crazy color, bring down our high range until we're affecting just the portion that we wanted. And using our knowledge of color theory, we can neutralize out those shadows in the bottom portions of the skin tones to get the look that we wanted. So now we have our clean whites, our clean blacks, and we've used just very simple tools in Resolve to create this look that gives a little bit more grit, drama, and color separation between these values. Now, if you want to take this a step further, one of the things that I like to do is I always like to pass my color grades through a film print emulation that I created. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off these two nodes. So after we've deleted those nodes, let's go ahead and add 3 serial nodes, move them over here. We're going to add one more for a total of 4. And we are going to prepare our timeline, our node tree for the LUT. So we need to color manage the color management. The LUT is expecting sRGB. So we'll go DaVinci wide gamut, DaVinci intermediate as our input color space in gamma, because that's our working timeline color space. And we'll select sRGB and sRGB for our output color space in gamma. We'll go ahead and select luminance mapping for that. And then in node 16, we'll go ahead and we'll drag our LUT onto the timeline. And now that's changed our color space into this node as Rec 709 Gamma 2.2. So we're going to select that as our input color space in Gamma and go back into the DaVinci Wide Gamut, DaVinci Intermediate, because that is what Resolve is expecting. From there, we can go ahead and add in our saturation. So we're going to go ahead and go into color space. We'll do our HSL method. I'll use HSV this time. We'll turn off channel 1 and channel 3 like we did last time. So we're only working with saturation. And we'll go ahead and bump up the saturation right around there. We are looking good so far. What we'll do now is we can go back and make any adjustments that we wanted to. So you can see we crushed our detail here a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and move up the offset just a bit, probably around here. I'll maybe cool it off just a bit too for the sake of our pillows that we have going on here. I felt like we got a little bit too warm. And then lastly, what we'll come in and do is we'll add our serial node, and then we'll just correct our low range. So we'll go back to about 2.6, which is where we know we were at. And we'll just go ahead and throw in a little bit of that complementary color right about there to neutralize the dark regions of our image. And now you can see we have that analogous color scheme going on. We can now go back in to node 1 and add in our noise reduction so that we have a nice noise reduced image. Probably around right here is looking good. If you guys would like to download this power grade, so every single adjustment that I made in this node tree, and you can go in and individually adjust it for your footage, you can download it in the link in the description down below. And if you would just like to save what we did here without the LUT, you can go ahead and grab a still, and then you can go into your gallery, you can export that still and save it so that you can apply it to any of your footage at a later date. That is what a power grade is. Let's go ahead and conclude. Even if we have a very simple set design, it's always possible to bring something to life with that. Sometimes a simple set design is done by intention, and sometimes it's just a matter of circumstance because we couldn't get a different set to work with on our films. Nonetheless, there's always a way to bring that vision to life. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comment section down below. Be sure to give me a big thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, turn on those post notifications if you have not. Follow me and the YouTube fam on social media. Our links are in the description down below. And now more than ever, my beautiful people, if you're ever feeling uninspired, uncreative, or just want to give up on life, remember, every day airplanes take off against the wind. Keep climbing, stay inspired, and as always, stay fabulous. I'm Sydney. See you beautiful people next time. Peace out.